How old were you when you realized you were the son of a president?
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before.
FX's Love Story. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette.
I didn't think I could love someone like this until you.
From executive producer Ryan Murphy.
It's not a question of if I want to spend the rest of my life with you. It's if I'm cut out to be Mrs. JFK Jr.
FX's Love Story. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. Watch now on FX, Hulu, and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers.
TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic. Folding a fitted bedsheet. Listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team. Digging a hole. Digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun. But TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Do we have any Friday the 13th fans in the house? My name is Matt Kelly. I'm one of the hosts of the Horror Movie Night podcast, and I am so excited to be sitting here with Jerry Wallace, Lauren Marie Taylor, and Bill Randolph of Friday the 13th, Part 2. I believe many of us consider this to be one of the best films in a very long franchise of films.
Absolutely.
Now, we've got a lot to cover, and we're going to be throwing questions out to the crowd. So I will talk to these fine people for about 5 to 10 minutes while you formulate your questions, and then I'm just going to start tossing to anybody who pops their hand up with a question. So I want to start with a pretty big topic that I was told to make sure to cover, which is in horror, it's very often that people just think, there's a guy in that costume, there's probably just one guy on set, he does everything, and that's the end of it. And that's simply not true. We just did a panel with 2 of the people who played Ghostface in Scream out of the total of, they said, roughly 7 people who wore that mask throughout the making of that movie. Jerry, you were one of the people who portrayed Jason in the movie, and I would love to know, what parts were you? What was it like to basically, you helped create a horror icon who was, a little boy jumping out of a river in the first movie. Now he's the face of the entire franchise, and you were part of the creation of that. Can you tell a little bit about what it was like creating that?
Yeah, creating it, I'm not sure. But let me tell you how it happened, which is an unusual story, I think. I was sort of in the right place at the right time. I was a young 20-something looking to break into the film business, and auditioned, went for a job to be a production assistant on the shoot, and surprisingly got the job. So I began to pick up props and do the things that a pre-production crew does. And then as the first assistant director was making the strip board, which is the little splits, each scene has a strip, and they began to realize that there's a lot of shots of hand pulling, the branch away so that Jason can look, and a shadow would walk by the house. And they knew they didn't need to pay an actor for that. And this was a low budget movie. And they were trying to save money any way they could. And so they looked around, the production manager and director, and they said, well, let's just let Jerry do it. He's going to be here, right?
Jerry, show us your hand.
That's right. Exactly. And what's that thing on your thumb, right? Some people know that I had a bruise on my thumb. So I was working on the set, and what happened was, the simple things came up, and I would do them. And then they said, well, Crazy Ralph's got to get strangled here, let's let Jerry do it, right? And so it evolved from that, where now they sort of trusted me to do this or that, and I began to work more scenes because it saved them money from bringing the other actors up from the city.
Wow. How many people do you think you killed in that movie?
I've got 5 confirmed dead. So Crazy Ralph, the handsome young man that was hanging from the snare, I slit his throat. I forget his name right now.
Russell Todd.
Russell Todd. And then this beautiful woman sitting next to me, I skewered her. Bill got it in the back as he was indelicately.
Immediately following fornication. It was a fuck show.
And so that was with another actress. So I got 5 confirmed kills.
It's pretty good numbers. That's more than me. Bill, we got to jump to you because I think if you were to survey a bunch of Friday the 13th fans to organize their favorite ways anyone has died in the franchise, the bed kebab is definitely one that comes up. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like doing that scene? What it was like to read that's how your character dies in the script?
Well, when you read it in the script and you think, oh man, this is cool. And of course, I have no idea how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And Carl Fullerton was the makeup guy. And so I went to his place and they did a mold of my back. And then when we actually did the shoot, the actual shot where the spear goes through, that was 8 hours. 2 takes, 4 hours each. And the thing that took the longest was attaching the back to my, from my shoulders down, they attached this fake back, but it had to look like it was my skin.
Yeah.
Like there was, that it wasn't like, okay, well, here's his shoulder and here's this piece of plastic.
Yeah, it suddenly turns tan out of nowhere. Yeah.
And there was a hole in the bed, and I was on my knees, kind of this way in the bed the whole time so that they could attach it to my shoulder going back. And then just before we shot, Marta would sneak in underneath, and so she was there for like 2 or 3 minutes, for each shot. I'm there for 4 hours waiting for this thing to get done. But it was pretty cool, and it was very disappointing that in the cut that they released, that you did not see that.
Yeah, if you check out the documentary, I think it's in Crystal Lake Memories, they pull out the shot where there's the wide shot of you guys with it through the bed and you're kind of wiggling and dying slowly. It's a really cool shot that's very frustrating that it's not in the movie.
And Marta was fantastic. She was, because you saw her face, because, I was like this. And she was looking this way, so she sees it before it goes in, and then, you watch her die. So that was cool.
One of the things that I always am fascinated with, especially on these types of movies, the low-budget slasher teen movies, is it really looks like the cast who are supposed to play friends are friends. That there is this beautiful bonding moment that's happening while making it. And I think Friday the 13th is... Part 2 specifically is one where you really do feel like a genuine love and friendship amongst these counselors oozing through the film. Is that true? Was that actually the case? Were you guys really good friends while making this?
Well, I was very lucky that Marta lived in New York City, and so did Stu Charno. So, before the film, all of us got together, and had dinner. And Stu was a pianist and played jazz, improvised jazz like crazy. He was amazing. So we would go watch him perform. And so we had a few times together before we went up, and we were friends before we got to the set. So that worked out really well for us.
That's a unique experience.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Tom McBride, who played Mark. I knew him from TV commercials because both of us were doing a lot of commercials in New York City, and they would always pair us together. I think we only booked one together. I think it was an Noxzema commercial because they were like, you guys look like you could be brother and sister. And so then when we were cast opposite each other in the film, it was like, wait, I know you. So it was kind of cool. But now we're supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend, not brother and sister. So it was neat. But the other thing, too, is we lived at the camp. It's not like we went to a hotel and went into our separate rooms. We stayed in the cabins. We ate breakfast together, lunch and dinner. We went running together. Some of them played tennis together. I think Steve played golf or something like that.
Yeah, we tried.
Well, I wasn't part of that because I was, whatever. But yeah, I wasn't a tennis player or anything, or golf player. But yeah, it was fun, eating, sleeping, drinking, and then, working together. it really created that bond between all of us.
And speaking of the tennis court, and Stu and I one night decided, and I don't know where, maybe it was a night that we weren't filming because nobody was around, but it was night. And of course, the tennis court was closed and the net was down. So he and I tried to put the net up so that we could play tennis in the middle of the night. We weren't successful, but, it was the effort.
Now, as the cast was bonding, Jerry, was the production team also bonding, or were you like living a whole separate production team world? Were you playing tennis, say, with the people that you were going to be killing?
No, it was a double life for me because part of my job was to drive the cast back and forth to where they were living from the set. And so, every day, several times a day, I would be with the cast back and forth. But most of my time was spent, working with the crew, the crew was very much friendly. We worked really well together. Peter Stein was the cinematographer, and Steve Gerbson was the gaffer, and he was a character. And everybody was, sort of handpicked to be able to survive out in the wilds of Connecticut for the summer, for the as it got cold too, which is another thing. So all of our cabins that seemed so okay to be in when it was nice in the beginning of September were not that great in October, right? But yeah, I thought the whole attitude and relationship between the crew and the cast was really, really quite good.
I think it's easy to forget that these movies have to be shot off season and that is not a fun time to be out in the woods. I love the idea of you like dropping them off at set and then just being like, all right, I'll see you for your stabbing later on today. It's like, yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Just pop a hand up right over there.
So you mentioned that you stayed in the cabins during the filming. So I have a question. When you're not filming and you were staying in the cabins, did anyone play pranks on each other? Like Jason, like in your sleep, don't go to sleep with your, did you guys like prank each other about a killing or?
The question is, were there any pranks on the campsite?
Well,
were you scared at night?
Yes.
Stu and I, the mature people that we were, we would sneak behind, say, Lauren's cabin, because everybody had screens on the back of their on the windows in back. So we would, when everybody was supposed to be sleeping, he and I would go back there and scratch the screens. So yeah, we were very mature.
Yeah, and sometimes when we would walk back from the cabins, like if everybody was busy. And I remember one night they said to Kirsten and me, they said, you guys can go back to your cabins. And Jerry's working, on set. So, of course, he couldn't drive us. So we had to walk up the hill from the camp where we were filming to the little camp that was also there where we were staying. And a couple of the guys, I guess they weren't doing anything at the time. They started like snapping twigs as we're walking and going, ooh, ooh, ooh. And Kirsten and I are just like, running up this hill.
Do you pull any pranks, Jerry?
Yeah, he killed us.
Yeah, that was my big prank, was machetes and spears.
Oops, you're dead.
Anyone else got a question? I see one back there, and I'll get you next.
How late into the night did the shoots go on? Because there's a lot of nighttime scenes.
How late were you guys filming with a film that's so nighttime based?
I mean, certainly eventually it got to the point where we were sleeping during the day and shooting all night.
Yeah, it was in the beginning. We did the day shots mostly, and then as the days got shorter, and it just switched to all night. So we would get up and go to work at 5 or 6 in the evening, and be off at 5 or 6 the next evening. And one thing that I remember happening was because of that, we didn't get a cocktail hour. And so it became bourbon breakfast.
Yes!
and very, we would go home once a week, hopefully, right, and bring back a bottle of bourbon, and how about this one, and you drink it at 6 or 7 in the morning and then go to bed, right?
I do have to ask off of that, because you said it started with a lot of days and then shifted to the night. Was the movie mostly shot in order? I know that's not the norm, but I guess, you're at the camp during the day and then all the killing really happens in the nighttime. Was it fairly in order of script?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think the only thing that we may have done out of order was the campfire scene. Wasn't that one of the first things we shot? Was the campfire scene?
Yeah, that's true.
And then
That's right.
they did the daytime stuff.
And now the whole, and the whole cast is together there in the beginning, right? But then not everybody is there at the same time anymore, right? So they did the big scenes and the day scenes first, and then sort of broke down into the smaller ones.
Yeah, and like the background actors, we had a core group of background actors, so anything that they were in was also shot first, so that they could go home and not stay at the camp and continue to get paid.
If you were shooting in sequence when you died, were you just like, you left, or did some of you stick around just to, play tennis or whatever?
No, I had to leave. It was too dark and creepy for me. It was like, I'll take living in New York City with all the police cars and people peeing in the corners anytime.
You had a question?
So, whether in part 2 or any other movies you worked in, was there ever a prop or wardrobe that you guys kind of snuck away from the movie as a souvenir that maybe you weren't supposed to take?
The question is, are you willing to indict yourself stealing props from a movie set?
In Neighbors, I was able to keep the candy underpants that we did not use when we weren't filming.
The hat that I have, I actually wore in Dress to Kill, a Brian De Palma film, before I did Friday the 13th. And when we went up, to camp, and the first time that we were on set with Steve, I brought the hat, I brought black high-top sneakers, I brought, all this stuff which I thought, Jeff would wear. And he looked at all of it and he said, okay, keep the hat. So it is the same hat that I wore in Dress to Kill.
That's funny.
Do we have any other questions out there in the crowd? Back to you.
So, how was Steve Miner to work?
Oh.
How was it working with Steve Miner? And we'll just go straight down the row, I guess.
Yeah. Steve was great. Steve had been the producer of Friday the 13th Part 1. And he was friends and partners, really, with Sean Cunningham, who was the executive producer and the sort of the owner of the company. So Steve had sort of made his bones, working as the producer and sort of putting things together, and then got the opportunity to direct. I think it was his first.
Yeah.
It was his first directorial thing, and he was 27 years old, right, young guy, and but a sweetheart. I mean, just a really kind, quiet, generous sort of guy. At least that's the way it was with me.
Yeah.
Well, with me, he made me cry. The first time he made me cry was when he made me put those brown undies on. And I was like, oh, they're so ugly. No, I'm just kidding. But when in the death scene, you may not remember this, I had a blood capsule in my mouth. So when I get stabbed by Mr. Wallace here with a sack over his head, I had to bite down on the capsule, and it was supposed to spurt out blood, not trickle the blood. Well, the capsule was in my mouth for a long time, so the gelatin on the hey, how are you? The gelatin on the outside of the capsule didn't break the way Steve wanted it to break. You may not remember, that's just so funny. And he said to me, he goes, Lauren, bite into it harder. And, as a young actress, my first big movie role, I was just like, and he's like, all right, let's start filming. She's crying, and I was like, he's yelling at me. Ah! I started screaming and all that. They gave me a new capsule, bit down on it, and the blood trickled down. But it was very easy to cry because I was so afraid that I was disappointing my director. And that was my experience from that scene. Otherwise, everything else was cool.
Yeah, fortunately, yes, Steve was fantastic. at my audition, of course, before I got the role, they were pairing you up with, different actresses that were there, to play, Marta's role. And there was this young lady that came in, and she was just bouncing off the wall. She had so much energy. And I just I looked at her, and then I looked at Steve, and I said, "Are you kidding?" And he cracked up, and we both realized that this girl was, not going to come close to this role. And I got the part, I think, right there, because I made that human connection with Steve of, wow, where did this come from? So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with Steve. He was very generous.
Jerry, I have a question for you based off of something that was just said earlier, because when we were talking about you becoming Jason in this movie, it was mostly that they needed someone to perform the hands, but Lauren mentioned you with the bag over your head. Did you actually also eventually have to put on like the overalls and the bag and everything?
Oh yeah, I mean quite often. So here I would be, picking up the styrofoam cups from the set as the camera moved from one place to the other, and then it would be, okay, Prowler, we want the Prowler, which was my, the name of my character, but often that would mean actually. All the time, it would mean going into wardrobe. Yeah. So I shift from being on the crew to being now Ellen Lutter is spoofing me up, and I'm feeling like a movie star, yes. And then I would do my simple scene usually, but no, I eventually, as I said, they said let's let Jerry do it, and I was in costume for hours sometimes.
Yeah, there's actually at Jerry's table, there's a photo of him in costume, with the overalls and the flannel shirt, but without the sack on his head, dragging me down the stairs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do we have any other questions out there in the crowd? I see one in the back.
Hey, how we doing? So I'm just curious. So the first film, everybody knows they kind of just the ratings board kind of let it go. So I've always heard the rumor they were waiting for Friday the 13th Part 2 with no, this got to go. They were going to really watch the violence. I was just curious, was there anybody from Paramount actually there, maybe kind of like, watch how far you take that scene versus maybe they were supportive, like, do it, we'll deal with it after.
Yeah, I guess the question is, was someone at Paramount there while you were shooting, or did most of the notes come in the editing process?
Frank Mancuso Jr., do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so Frank Mancuso at the time was the head of Paramount Studios in Hollywood. His son, Junior, who was probably, 20 years old. Yeah.
12 with like a Porsche or something.
Yeah, he was sort of an odd man out for us because he was definitely there to watch from the studio's point of view, but he was a kid, so he was not holding us back. He was like, I never remember him saying any don't do this or don't do that. So I think yes, there was some supervision, but not so much. And if you obviously know, there's a lot that was cut out that was either too sexy or too violent. That the movie, when we all saw it, we all went, hey, where's that one, right?
Yeah. I feel like the Friday the 13th films, for whatever reason, really became like ground zero for the most MPAA notes. Like because you watch like any documentary about it, it's like, yeah, this one was pretty good, and then we had to cut this, and now it's just good. They cut out the stuff that people paid. Yeah, they cut out the parts that people were paying to see. But like, I do wonder why that specific franchise really seemed to be like ground zero for so much of the ire that came from it.
I think it was because it was one of the first slasher movies. Period.
Yeah.
It was right at the beginning of this whole horror, genre.
I always say, because people do point to like a Black Christmas or a Halloween, but those movies still have a lot of implication In the first Friday the 13th, there's no implication of what's happening to these people. We're getting a full view of the arrowheads coming through necks and hatchets into faces and stuff. And I think, they were just like, how dare you? How dare you do this and we allow it to get released?
There's a reason why Harry Manfredini, in the composer, in one of them, it's one of the songs is called Slicin' and Dicin'.
Do we have any other questions out there from the crowd over there?
Before the two of you were cast, had you seen the first one?
Oh yeah. How familiar were you with the original? Because this is a pretty quick turnaround on the sequel as well.
They I don't know about you, Bill. Were you there? They had a screening room, and they gathered, I guess, a few of us, and that's how I watched it. I watched it in a screening room. Yes.
The thing that was fun is that, in New York at the time, a lot of us being, unemployed actors and whatever, there was a bowling alley on 77th Street in Amsterdam, like a 10-lane slice out of Midwest right there in Manhattan. A lot of us unemployed actors used to go bowl there. So I actually knew Kevin, and we had bowled together before 1 and 2. So, one night when we're bowling, I said, hey, Kevin, I'm playing your clone. They're doing part 2, and he said, oh, that's cool. So, a lot of people knew each other, as we were all struggling to become something.
And here's the funny thing, because I didn't know that story. I don't know if you know this one, but Kevin and I were doing an off-Broadway show called Album, a 4-person show about growing up in the 60s. Sure. Same time I was doing Neighbors. And the whole time I was in that show, not once did Kevin and I talk about Friday the 13th.
Wow.
Not once. It was weird. I don't even think he had it in his bio.
No, for a long time, I think he kind of...
But this is the beginning. This is 1981.
I don't know.
Go back in time.
I feel like that's one of those cool things that people don't realize is in New York and LA, there are these moments where it's just a bunch of young go-getters hanging out. There's, not a hard movie at all, but one of my favorite movies is a teen flick called Can't Hardly Wait. And you watch that movie and the background actors, you're like, there's Jason Segel. and like the story was just like, we put out a calling card for anyone who was 20 that was looking for work, be guests at this party movie. And like you look in the background, it's like, oh, all these people who like later became huge. And that's just what it is in those worlds sometimes. Do we have any other questions out there from the crowd? Go ahead.
I don't know if you can disclose this or not, but I know it's a horror, but was there any romance, like outside of filming? Like, did anybody, like the cast, like kind of link up?
Did anything get steamy on the tennis court is the question. That's
I'm sorry?
Our sound designer.
Sound man was Murphy?
Yes. Murphy and I had a huge crush on our sound designer, Murph. And we went out a few times. We went out a few times. He lived on the Upper West Side, and we used to go to Pizzeria Uno, right across from the Museum of Natural History. No bones about it. Pardon the pun. But no, we went out a few times. We didn't know. I mean,
was this before or after the film?
It was during and after. Yes.
Wow.
I dropped the mic to Jerry.
Yeah, I don't have any details, and it's all just sort of innuendo here, but Paul Volo was the second grip, and a handsome sort of swashbuckling kind of guy, right? And he started to work on Kirsten.
Oh, boy, yes! Did he have the motorcycle?
Yeah.
She went riding with him.
Yeah. So Paul Volo had the cabin right next to mine, right? And one time as I was coming out, I was watching the two of them go in. I don't know what happened, but this was, was after a camp, and people were learning things there.
All right, any other questions out there?
What do you make of the ending? It's quite ambiguous about the fate of certain characters.
The question about the ambiguous ending of the movie and the fate of certain characters. What is your take on that?
Well, Amy's been pretty open about being approached for part 3, which is a completely different story than the part 3 that they actually made. It's a completely different script. The character of Ginny is in college. She's still dating Paul, and Jason apparently finds out about her, and things happen. I don't want to say a whole lot because it's not my story to tell. It's Amy's. And I don't want to give away anything that was written either. But it was a very different story than part 3, but it was a continuation of what happens to the character of Ginny and the character of Paul after camp is over. Yeah, I don't know if you...
And what about Ted?
Ted's still at the bar.
Yeah, that's right.
Smartest guy of all of us.
I mean, it is one of the other interesting things about Friday the 13th. I have a 10-year-old that's starting to get into this stuff, and like trying to explain to him, like, well, yeah, like Sydney is in all the Scream movies, but most of the people who survive the end of these Friday the 13th movies don't make it much longer. They usually get rid of them pretty early on in the next one just to keep moving to a new group. Do we have any other questions out there?
Any questions about the cooler?
Questions about anything, really?
The road trip cooler? Bobby, anything?
What are you guys up to these days?
What are all you doing now in 2025?
Oh, well, I did a little movie called In a Violent Nature, which came out last May. And yeah, then I've worked with this British group, Dark Temple Motion Pictures, and we did 2 together. He Sees You When You're Sleeping, which came out last November, and Snake Manor. And recently, some dude by the name of Bobby Heckman wrote Loose Ends Victim No More Part 2. And he said, you know what, Lauren, you did such a good job with that monologue in A Violent Nature that I wrote a 2-page monologue for you. So I filmed that. When we filmed it just a month ago or 2 months ago?
September.
Yeah, September, and the story is really great. I cannot even hint at it because he would kill me, but it's really great, and the character is a really nice twist.
And this time you made the director.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. And then Bill can tell you we have something coming up that we're doing together.
You know, this is how things work. And the only way you get jobs is when your friends say, well, why don't you use this person? But I recently did a film called Collection Day with Ron Milkey. And we had lost an actor, and I suggested him. He did it. And then Ron and Lauren Marie are doing this film called Christmas at Aunt Betty's. Which starts filming mid-November, December. And they lost somebody, so they suggested me. So now the 3 of us are actually going to be in a party scene all together in Christmas at Aunt Betty's.
And who else is in it?
Eileen Dietz.
Eileen Dietz plays my mother in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Christmas at Aunt Betty's.
It's in super pre-production, so there's probably nothing out there about it. Yeah. Oh, and I also did a movie called Desert Fiends, Part 2, which was kind of fun with the Big Schwag and Eric Roberts, and I had to fend off zombie type of people in the desert, and I didn't tell the director, but 2 days before filming, I fell off a ladder and I broke my wrist. So I showed up with a cast from here to my shoulder, and he said, well, it is a horror comedy, and I had to fend off the zombies with my cast like this. Get away from me, you bitch! Get your hands off me!
Listen, a cast is a great way to protect you from being bit by a zombie, actually.
I was even thinking, the director's like, you know what, we didn't see her bite you because of the cast. I'm like, I may still be alive for Part 3.
Jerry, how about you? What have you been up to post Friday the 13th, Part 2?
You're talking about 45 years now?
Can you sum it up in a minute or two?
Just a little bit.
Okay, well, after Friday the 13th, I came back to Manhattan where I lived and had made good contacts in the film business, and my phone started to ring, and I started to work. And I learned my bones and began to be a production manager, and I did a lot of different things. I production managed Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Time After Time. I production managed Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms, so I was in the music business for a little bit, but also got into documentary films and corporate films. Anyway, for 15 years, I did bounce from one part of the film production business to another. And then when I was 41 years old, a reversal in my family life, I decided to bail on the film business and went back to school and I got a master's in education, and for the next 16 years taught sixth grade social studies in White Plains, New York.
Did you ever show your students you killing people and being like, act up, and this might happen? I've killed before and I'll kill again. That's amazing, though, and especially doing music videos at arguably the biggest point for music videos, that early MTV era. I mean, that Girls Just Want to Have Fun music video is a massive cornerstone of the entire music video industry. That's amazing that you were a part of that.
Yeah.
I had no clue. That's so cool. Do we have any other questions out in the audience?
Are you surprised that the film has had such longevity in the minds of fans?
The longevity, like I said, I think a lot of people consider this one of the best ones. Does that shock you guys at the time that you were making it, that this was going to be one of the most beloved in the franchise?
Who knew, right? Who knew?
The first time I saw it, it was in a screening room in New York City, and I was there with my agent. And basically, at the end of the movie, I turned to my agent and I said, "Well, that won't do me any harm." Never in a million years thinking 45 years later we would still be talking about it.
And it's thanks to you guys.
Yeah.
You know, come on.
Thanks to the fans.
Thanks to you guys.
Yeah, really.
I want to bounce back to Lauren real quick, because you were in A Violent Nature, which is a very Friday the 13th coded film. Did that come up when you were casted and all those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the whole story about the casting until recently, but apparently the director, Chris Nash, wanted one of the guys from the Friday the 13th franchise to play the role of the person who picks up the final girl, the character of Chris in the movie. And then he decided it would be too threatening to have a guy pick her up after she's been chased by this guy, with this thing on his head and chains and things like that. So he looked at several of his favorite, franchise, because he loved the Friday the 13th franchise. So it's kind of like an homage to 80s slashers in general, but especially Friday the 13th. And he was like, this one. And I interviewed with him, read with him, and he was like, that's yours. It's yours. And that was how that came about. And so, so when we were doing it, I was only shooting for a few days, and they had already done everything else. But the feeling, especially being in the middle of nowhere in Canada, in Sault Ste. Marie, again, like our filming experience in Friday the 13th, it's creepy out there. Stay the heck out of the woods. Jeez. So it had that same feeling. And then when I saw the film on Governor's Island, when they had the big, opening event there, and the, IFC and Shudder had the big event there with the big screening outside, it was like, wow, it was creepy, but it also reminded me of the feeling that you get when you watch Friday the 13th with the prowler in the woods. You don't see him, you don't know what he's up to. In this case, you don't know what he's thinking. So yeah, thanks.
You got a question?
Do you guys actually sit back and rewatch the movie with your family and friends, together around Halloween?
Yeah, is this a rewatch at the home?
Little kids in your family are when you have to explain who that's you. Are they how is that feeling?
My brother is horrible. My brother lives in Virginia, and he's like Mr. That all that. And I'll go there and go, hey, you want to watch Friday the 13th Part 2? Hey, you want to watch In a Violent? I'm like, no, Ed, let's watch Neighbors. Let's watch something harmless. But quick story, when my oldest daughter was in 5th grade, she was at a sleepover. And she comes home from the sleepover in the days of Blockbuster Video. And she goes, so, when were you going to tell me? I'm going, what? Because I was on the soap opera at the time. And that's all my kids knew, and that's all my neighbors knew. So, and I said, tell you what? You're in 5th grade. What do I need to tell you? She goes,
Louisa and I were watching a movie last night, and Friday the 13th Part 2, and then she's like, oh my God, Katie, is that your mom?
So I had some serious explaining to do. Did you ever have that with Thompson?
Not really, but the thing was that happened to me. We were, seeing the principal, at one of the schools at Thompson, and I had no idea that he had even seen the film. But as I'm walking out, as we're all, kind of walking out of the office, the secretary says, well, we saw your movie. Thompson told us all about it. And that was the first time that I even knew that he had seen it, But apparently, they had seen it, and they had told, the people at school, you got to see this movie. So yeah, that made me very happy, because it wasn't me, saying, come on, you got to watch my movie, you got to watch my movie. Yeah. So he discovered it himself.
Yeah, I mean, with social media and everything like that, I didn't mention, now that you mentioned, I went back to school and got my master's, and I was teaching first grade in East Harlem for 10 years. And recently on Instagram, I got a message from Tatiana, I won't say her last name, and she goes, hi, I'm just wondering, you look like a lot like my first grade teacher, from back in 2011. Are you the same Miss Lauren? And I'm looking through my feed, I'm going, I don't have any pictures of me with the brown undies, and I hadn't yet. So I wrote back and I said, oh yes, Tatiana, that was me. And she goes, I am so sorry for being such a brat when I was in first grade. I was like, oh, so that was kind of funny.
Is there anyone else who has a last question before we wrap up the panel? Anybody? All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you. Let's show appreciation here. And, quick sign off, where can people go to check out, not just this weekend, but when they go home, what are some things that you want them to be checking out that you may have worked on in the past or in the future?
Well, a lot of you guys know, for Instagram, it's just my name, Lauren Marie Taylor, with the number 1 behind it, as you guys know. And there's also a website that I'm still working on with my best friend, who's from Texas. Lauren Marie, you got to put more Friday the 13th things up there. And so that's just my name, laurenmarietaylor.com. That's it.
Yeah, I did this, and certainly the thing is that when you do a film, you have no idea when, where, and how it will ever come out. Yeah. But I did a film called Collection Day last year, and then we're doing this film coming up, Christmas at Aunt Betty's. And, just look for those. Eventually, hopefully, it will be available. Both of them will be available, and you can see them.
And go, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank
you, guys. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.